All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. This presentation is on professionalism for the pre-health students. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our staff who is going to be facilitating this. So my name is Grace Cardenas-Leal. I'm the coordinator for pre-professional advising, and I'd love to have Josh introduce himself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Deason, pre-professional advisor here in the office working alongside Grace.
Thank you. We have a special guest here today. And so joining us from the medical program, Tamara, would you introduce yourself as well?
Hello, everyone. My name is Tamara Martinez-Anderson. I serve as the Director of Admissions at UNR Med. It's great to be joining you today.
And thank you. I think we can all agree that the topic on professionalism is very important. And many students don't necessarily realize how this quality is definitely important in terms of how admissions evaluators will actually make that final decision about who they want to accept in their medical program. But we'll start off with a definition from square one. What is professionalism? How is it defined? And so according to Webster's dictionary, professionalism is having the skills, the good judgment and polite behavior that is expected from a person who is trained to do a job well. Again, really it's about your behavior, and we tell students your behavior will definitely be the experience people will have about you as a future healthcare provider. And so why is professionalism important? Well, it is highly valued in the health profession schools, and numerous studies exist on how acquisition of these values and attributes and beliefs really elevate the culture of medicine. So professionalism is actually more than just about good manners. When we look at patient surveys, you will be your patient's experience. So on the bottom line, in terms of business and revenue and all of that, you really do set the tone for those interactions with patients and colleagues and supervisors. The reputation of what you bring is also going to be represented by the company or the industry that you work in. So, and on this campus, more importantly, your behavior is indicative of your character, which admissions evaluators will extrapolate in review of who you are. So in consideration of you supporting all of your documents towards medical programs later on, really it is that personal behavior of yours that will actually make a difference to be accepted or not. But let's take a look at various forms of interactions. So first of all, language and direct interactions from others. And so what we learn about professionalism fundamentally is that you must learn to communicate and interact skillfully. This is a people skills area, and the field that you're getting into is not just about sciences. It is dealing with people across ethnic groups, across ages, across genders. And so being able to be skillful at dealing with all sorts of people is going to be very important. When you're looking at expletives and slang terms, and we know that people can be very casual. It could be very okay among close friends and family, but certainly not around other individuals. We also encourage students to address appropriately by use of titles, Dr., Miss, or Mr. And also very important to work to eliminate all kinds of conflicts of interest. And so with these interactions, we also wanted to support a vignette to also talk about this. And so Josh, would you introduce the vignette?
Sure, yeah, so our vignette is a patient's family offers you tickets for a special event as a favor for allowing them to bypass a huge waiting list to see a doctor.
Okay. So really here, we're looking at the elements or what are the characteristics here that really affect professionalism. I know, Tran, you're the only student here, but Tamara, you can certainly, put your input here. What are those elements that might be very discerning in this vignette?
I think one of like the most important one is just this is not setting a boundary between like your relationship with the patient, that you should be like strictly their physician. So if you do accept like offers like tickets, I think you're violating that patient to physician relationship, and which can lead to like bias and like which is like what it also says towards the end, that it's like a favor for them so that they can bypass a huge waiting list. So yeah.
Excellent. Any other thoughts around this, Josh or Tamara?
I would add that one of the core competencies that medical schools are looking for is ethical responsibility. And so if you look at what the AAMC has said about that, we're looking for individuals that engage in ethical behavior and encourage others to do the same, and resist peer pressure to step outside of the boundaries of policies or rules or just plain ethical behavior. And so what you're seeing in this vignette is an opportunity to showcase that you actually are ethical and that you are not working around the system.
Excellent, excellent. I love how you're tying that back to the core competencies. I think we really need to emphasize that in terms of what AEMCs and even medical programs are expecting from their entering pre-med students or pre-health students in general. Thank you. So let's talk about another area of professionalism and cultural competencies, developing an awareness of not only one's own cultural values, but really understanding the dynamics of differences. I think this is really important, where we need to be mindful and very careful about saying things that might offend other people because of their background or belief systems. And so increasing your conscientiousness of the uniqueness of the patient's experience in a larger social context is going to be really important. And trying to adapting practice to an individual's cultural context is a key to effective communication, interactions, and outcomes. And as we know, as a healthcare provider or a physician, one of the important elements here is to develop trust with your patients. Developing trust leads into good relationships. Relationship buildings will help them feel like you're listening and understanding where they're coming from. And so having that openness and warmth with your patient in all regards is going to be very important in terms of professionalism. So let's talk about another vignette here, Josh.
Yeah, so with this vignette, the medical school assigns a Hispanic family to first-year students for early clinical experience. You're on an elevator and hear a student discussing his assigned family, including the names of the family in derogatory terms.
So any thoughts around this? And I'm opening up to anyone here.
So this vignette actually sounds like a scenario we might have in our multi-mini interviews. And so I think it's a really great one to bring up, because we are always asking our prospective medical students to develop and demonstrate cultural competence. And so if you can think about these things ahead of time, how you would respond in scenarios like this, it's actually going to be something we're going to be looking for in a medical school application. And then the other part of that I just wanted to mention was that sometimes we're not even aware that we have certain biases, maybe uncomfortable around individuals that speak another language, or that we have unconscious biases towards particular ethnicities or genders. And so part of professionalism is becoming aware of those biases, and then not just being aware of them, but working to manage them.
Absolutely. When you think about the population of individuals just globally, so being really effective healthcare provider it's almost expected that you have this greater awareness and conscientiousness to put your best foot forward in any regards or interactions with individuals. Thank you. So let's talk about another interaction. And so we really want to talk to students also about classroom etiquette. And I know that in classroom for lots of our younger students coming from high school to college, it is a big transition. And normal practices that they have been used to, we really tell students now, if you are thinking about the healthcare area, we are holding you to a higher expectation and standards. And certainly we could recommend some of these just because you're also in a position where we encourage you to build relationships with your faculty members and staff around you for letters of recommendations later on in the future. So we like to tell students, introduce yourself to your instructor. And we always ask them, when you do start a class, a brand new class, do you even introduce yourself to that professor? Or do you just sit in the back and, for the whole rest of the coursework that you're not engaging? And so we really want to encourage you, always introduce yourself, check in, utilize office hours. And when the course is ended, thank the instructor for their time and for their effort and for the lessons that they have worked so hard to put together for you. On another note too, it's always good manner to arrive early and be fully present to engage in coursework. And obviously turning off or at least silencing your cell phones. I think that's the one biggest things, as a professor, since they have important information that they want to share. When cell phones call, it really is very disruptive, not only for the instructor, but for everyone who is there wanting to learn. And so show your politeness and the courteous, the courteousness to your peers. And who knows, the way where things work, they might be your colleague or your supervisor some of these days. So the way that you conduct yourself, even in the dorms or in the housings, always be mindful of who's going to be around. And use correct form and salutations when you email your professors or your TAs. I was actually attending a workshop where one of the admissions deans remarked that they would get student emails without a salutation, to be like, hey, I'm just inquiring about this, thank you. And there's no name. So you also have to be able to say in a more formalized way, the salutations, what your question is, how to contact you best, and make sure you formalize all of that information. The admissions dean didn't feel like this person knew those etiquettes in terms of emails. So when you're trying to reach out, just to be mindful about what you're also communicating, that because that also projects your intelligence and your manners.
Yeah, Grace, I think you're hitting a great point there that, because texting is so common, I think sometimes students forget the difference between texting and email. And there is a difference there. There should be a difference there and, a formality to that. And I know, Grace, like you're saying, I've had emails from students too that are just, what's that thing we're supposed to do? Or, there's nothing, there's no greeting, no salutation, anything. And it does come off as very unprofessional and something that, I agree students definitely need to be aware of.
Yeah. So we'll talk about another vignette. So, Josh.
Yeah, so in this vignette, a student observes an exemplary student during the end of semester final using a textbook during a major closed book examination.
So any thoughts around this? This actually is happening in classes, sad to say. So if you were a student yourself in there or a professor, what are the elements that are involved in this scenario? Or what would you do? What would you respond?
I think one of the biggest value that's in play here. It's just, again, the ethical responsibility. Because if you are like cheating, especially in like a major examination, you are having like I guess, an unfair advantage over the other students. But yeah.
You know, Grace, I'm always mindful of the incredible stress that prospective medical students feel to deliver on their knowledge and to demonstrate their skills. Something like this just puts you at risk of having an institutional action, and that can be one of the leading reasons why an admissions committee will hesitate, even if you have an otherwise exemplary application. So these types of incidents, and one of the hard things is that an institutional action can also, if you observe this behavior and don't report it. And so it's important to be mindful of that. And, you know, at the same time, to show some kindness and compassion, because I absolutely do understand the level of stress that everyone is under in order to be well prepared for the application process. But there really are no shortcuts to gaining the knowledge that you need to be prepared for the academic rigor of medical school. In the end, you're entering a profession where you will be responsible for others' lives, and there will not be an open book. There will not be a resource there. And so this is your opportunity as a student, even if it means getting a lesser grade. There are opportunities to improve and to continue to improve and continue learning. I would much rather see you do that. Get a B on the exam, get a C on the exam because maybe you weren't ready, and then to continuously improve and show that you're committed to lifelong learning and to acquiring the knowledge that you need to be successful in the rigorous academic environment that medical school is.
Absolutely. I think, Tamara, you really hit that on the nail here, because I want students to know that even one infraction, they might feel pressured or stressed out, but that one infraction could actually cost them the application to be denied. And I've had some students who I know have great grade trends from freshman year, second year, then things just started to build up. They felt some stress, and it led to something like this in a situation where it did get on their record. And that was something they had to report in their application. And at that point in time, it scarred very deeply. And unfortunately, this student, while he was so apologetic after the fact and realized if he had just approached the professor or just been honest about his progress at that point, maybe taking, like I said, a C or that D would have been so much better in the long run, because everything else was going so well for him. Thank you. So let's talk about the big area. And I appreciate Josh bringing this out, because we are in a society now where emailing and social media is the norm. We wake up to this. It's almost like this is our automatic response every single day. And we end the day emailing or social media checking again. And so we're used to using these OMGs, LOLs, BRBs. So we abbreviate everything, and we always like to use, the fist bump emojis. They're fine for texting with your friends, but they are certainly not appropriate for professional communications or emails. We encourage students to use the correct form and salutations when you email your professors and or teachers' assistants. And watch what you post on social media. I know we enjoy having a means where we can connect with individuals. And for some of our students who are away from home and away from familiar friends, posting on a daily basis just to show what they're doing is, a one way to keep in contact. But also be very mindful about what those messages are, or if somebody is tagging you, if you are also in going in activities that might not necessarily be as discreet as you'd want them to be. There are some medical programs that actually have a social media presence policy, which means they can base their admissions decisions on what you post. So we tell students, start to professionalize your social media. You might want to have one that is private, personally, and then one that's more professionalized, and utilizing your also name there to reflect your real name and not some party animal kind of tag on there as well. So rather than a vignette, we actually have a video we'd like to show you. So let's click into the video.
It's like that's sharing on a different screen for me. Can you see that or no?
No.
Okay, so I'll need to change my share here real quick.
Well, it was great talking to you. Excellent academics, and your recommendations are outstanding.
Thank you.
You won't mind if I take a look at your online social media posts?
Why?
It's just something we do as a matter of course nowadays. It gives us extra insight into whoever we're bringing on board. I'm sure we won't find anything significant.
I bet you I'm gonna get another one. Watch. Man. Let's do it. Whoa. Whoa. Nice. Yeah. One more. Come on. Good. Come on. Take this one. Awesome. Way down the hatch. Say it again. That's it. One. Whoa. Nice. Oh, this is awesome. Oh man, I gotta post this.
We've all been in situations like this before. We've had fun. We want our friends to see it, so we share it. We post it online on social media websites, or send photos in an email or text, and all it takes is a push of a button. But that's not where it ends. In many cases, it's just the beginning. Professionals in a wide range of fields are discovering the consequences of social media, from its impact on personal reputations, to loss of income and opportunities, to lawsuits and litigation. It's not that there's anything wrong with having a good time and broadcasting it to the world. It's understanding that most social networking is public, not private property. And once posted, it can never truly disappear. And anything you post online can never be considered private.
Very good. No problems here. We're all looking forward to you coming on board.
Thank you. Me too.
Oh, awesome.
Very excited about the opportunity.
As are we.
Take a moment and imagine a few other scenarios. It may not be an interview for a job or an application for graduate or medical school. It may be a post like this, or a message like this, or a photo like this. Were these real or fake? The answer, unfortunately, is these were all based on real posts that cause real problems. Did you know the most common cause of disciplinary action against medical students, residents, and physicians isn't making a wrong diagnosis or making a mistake in the operating room? It's a lack of professional behavior. Did you know that these posts, even without any patient identifiers, could be HIPAA violations and may also violate state privacy laws, which in turn could lead to significant fines and even jail time? We need to acknowledge that being in the medical profession is a job, a responsibility, and a privilege. Doctors, nurses, and medical professionals have chosen a higher calling and must demonstrate their professionalism to a higher standard. Look, there's nothing wrong with having a good time. And there are positives to social media too. Communicating with friends, family, colleagues, and patients. Promoting your medical practice. Getting important messages out to the public, even simply as a form of personal expression. But the pitfalls are severe. Loss of friends, patients, being fired, or being disciplined by state boards of medicine, including having your professional license revoked. You could even wind up in jail. So think a little bit before you send a message or upload an image. Is this something you'd want your mother to see or your boss? If you have any questions about something you're about to post, back off and think about it for 24 hours. It is too easy to just push a button and regret it for the rest of your life. It could be the difference between humiliation and having the time of your life. So go out, have fun, but please remember to post responsibly.
I think this is common sense, watching what we're doing, but unfortunately, it's still a very common mistake students tend to do. Any thoughts around this, Tamara, Josh, or even Tran?
I think it's important, Grace, to remember too that, if someone reposts something that you've posted or takes a screenshot of something you've posted, even if you delete it, it's not gone, right? Like it's still there, there's still evidence. So yeah, so important just from the get-go. If you even doubt for a second if you should post it or not, don't post it, because even taking it down doesn't mean that it necessarily went away.
I really appreciated the message at the end of the video, that it's not that you can't go out and have fun. You just need to do it in a responsible manner and be aware of who may see those posts. We don't actively have a policy to look at social media at UNR Med, but that doesn't mean that one of our 15 evaluators or reviewers of applications might not see a name or see something within your application and decide to go and check that out themselves. We also don't have a policy that says you can't do that. And so I think that's important to know as you prepare for your application process.
Right. And as I had mentioned also, be wary of who might be taking photographs of you in certain events and letting them know not to tag you if they do have that propensity to use it on their social media if they're not like a pre-health student. Again, these that can just go out at random, like I said, and you'll be visible on their post, which you could still be identified by admissions folks if they're really trying to trace your activities. Okay, thank you. So most importantly, now let's talk about the clinical observation and shadowing professionalism. As a student of UNR too, and when we refer students, we want this, we want you to be respectful of your patients, of the patients that you'll be seeing and their families, no matter who they are. And when you're working in that environment, you're there to learn. And if your supervisors or doctors or some of those colleagues in that work environment might say, sort of like a criticism to you, use appropriate behavior to demonstrate that you are willing to learn and to grow, and that you're not just emotionally responding back in a heated kind of thing, but really taking things constructively. Demonstrate honesty, courtesy, ethics, and patience, graciousness, and integrity in all of your patient care and personal interactions in that environment. Also be punctual, going to work to demonstrate that you are dependable, and consider your personal grooming as well, choice of attire and hygiene. When I work with our healthcare providers, they will let me know who they would love to have again after the shadowing. And then there are some that they definitely will say this person needs to learn some of that professionalism before they even shadow any other doctor or offices. So we're also hoping that you keep this in mind when you do your shadowing observations. This is very, very important, and we have a vignette around this as well.
So in this vignette, you're shadowing a doctor when you notice another student reading the chart of a patient who is a personal friend of theirs and starts to talk about this to others outside of the clinic. You know that the chart has some sensitive personal information in it.
So again, any thoughts, feedbacks, elements here about professionalism? And I'll open up to everyone.
I think this vignette takes it beyond just the social skills of being aware of others' needs and feelings and paying attention to social and behavioral cues, to once again being in that unethical category and violating HIPAA in some cases. And so being aware of what HIPAA is before you going into a shadowing experience, understanding your responsibility to keep information that you may learn during that experience confidential, because the individuals that you're shadowing often become the writers of your letters of evaluation. And so you want to make sure that they are going to be able to provide you with a positive letter. And an incident like this could, in fact, completely change the way that that letter reads about your competence and about your fit for the practice of medicine.
And thank you so much, Tamara, which actually leads into this next slide. So I'm glad that you had mentioned that. So here are the implications. As Tamara had mentioned, it really does determine the quality of your letters of recommendations when you shadow or you volunteer or do community work. And for most applications, we're going to be requiring a letter from a physician or a supervisor. So you want to always be on your best foot and showing well, so that way it's a positive review on who you are. And the other thing too, think about just anyone here on campus. Be courteous, be nice. There are individuals here who might be part of the admissions interview team or know someone who is. And I tell you, people will talk. And people will say, are you a pre-med student, a pre-health student? Okay, and if you are rude or discourteous to even like the front desk individuals, they take that to heart, and that might also be a disparaging thing on your character or your conduct. So be again mindful of who you're around and what you're saying and what you're doing on the campus. And, this is, for Josh, Tamara, and I, we want to be, we love to hear from healthcare providers that say that they're accepting students who want to shadow in their clinic. And so we also want to be able to refer students who demonstrate those high standards of professionalism. And, Tran, we appreciate you being here this afternoon. It shows that you do want to learn, you're conscientious of also showing well for yourself. This Thursday is a great opportunity. October 21 is our fall career and internship fair from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the Joe Student Union. So it's an opportunity for you to meet recruiters or admissions teams, talk to them. So put your best foot forward, be memorable in a positive way, dress up as well too. And attend with a connection mindset. Who can I meet here? What can I learn, rather than a consumer mindset where what can I take? Let me grab brochures without engaging with that person and looking them at the eye to say, let me learn what about your program, your job. Let me tell you also who I am and why I might be interested. So change the mindset to be connection mindset, again, building relationships rather than taking information just for yourself. And so why is professionalism important? Bottom line, it's the reflection of the values, attitudes, and beliefs from the culture of medicine and healthcare. You're talking about compassion and empathy. And it really means having the ability to understand the perspective outside of your own through being curious about another person's lived experience. Active listening. It's the ability to openly listen to what a person is saying without interrupting, dissing, or becoming emotionally reactive. And honoring disagreements. It's the ability to disagree with grace and humility while still viewing the other person's full humanity. That is what professionalism is all about. And I'd love to hear from Josh, Tamara, Tran, your thoughts around this as well.
I would just add to that, a lot of our vignettes kind of touched on this, but professionalism does have a lot to do with personal integrity, right? It has a lot to do with just being a person of integrity, whether 50 people are watching or no one is watching, kind of what is going on inside of you of what's acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And, that will come out and that will show. And as you go through, a rigorous process of interviewing and meeting lots of people, if you don't have some of these things kind of figured out and have a good handle on this, it's probably going to come out over time during interviews and some of those processes that, you can't really fake who you are. A lot of people can to an extent, but when you're going through the rigors and the pressures and the extent of an interview and getting into a professional school, you're not going to be able to hide that very well. And so just having this kind of be your baseline of this is how I'm going to choose to live, this is how I'm going to choose to approach these situations, and this is the type of person I want to be, and this is the type of practitioner I want to be. I think that's so important to get a good handle on that now so that you can move forward in a positive way.
That was excellent, Josh. I can't even add any more to that. That was wonderful. Tamara, do you have also any last thoughts or advice?
So this might be where I'd like to share my screen because I think it will add to this particular slide.
Great.
So when you ask the question about why professionalism is important, I think it's very important to know what it is that medical schools are looking for. Let me see if I can drag that over so it's not encroaching. I'm frozen. Can you all hear me? There we go. All right. So UNR Med, what we are seeking in our future doctors, it really covers 4 areas: a mature passion for medicine, cultural competence, a vision, alignment with our vision and our core values and our mission, and readiness for medical school. And if you look at any of these, if you look at readiness for medical school, what comes under that? Professionalism, that we're looking for dependability and a collaborative approach, that we're looking for individuals who are responsible. So that's why professionalism is important. But then if you go back and look at mature passion for medicine, once again, we're looking for individuals that have a very mature understanding of the profession and what the responsibilities are of a physician. And that goes right back to professionalism. If you look at cultural competence, we're looking for individuals with strong social skills, that ability to read others, their behaviors, their understand their feelings, be sensitive and culturally aware of differences in approach based upon one's background. So we're looking for a social awareness. In addition, here at UNR Med, our core values include that we succeed with trust and respect. So when we're evaluating an application, we are looking for individuals who have developed and can demonstrate the ability to build trust with others and to show respect for others. So collectively, across the board, professionalism is really a key component to what we're looking for in our future students and our future doctors. I also want to share, and I'll post a link to this, that at UNR Med, every medical student who comes in is expected to abide by our UNR Med Code of Student Professionalism. And pretty much any medical school you go to, you're going to find something similar to this. And just as was talked about today, that includes having integrity, being reliable and responsible, having self-awareness of yourself and your own responsibilities to others, to team building and having strong communication skills, and to having patient-centered care, which means that you are being mindful of who your patient is, what their background is, what their needs are, instead of just immediately focusing on what you want to tell them about their health. And then finally, as was mentioned earlier, professionalism is at the heart of the core competencies that AAMC, the American Association of Medical Schools, says that every entering medical student needs. And so if you look at all of those 15 core competencies that they have, most of them fall under pre-professional skills and competencies. And so right there, you're just reinforcing how important it is that in your application, you have worked hard to develop, and then that you demonstrate that you have these core competencies. So I am going to share those links, but they'll also be available in the presentation.
Thank you, Tamara. I really, really appreciate you bringing in that perspective, particularly on the med school. And as a director for our School of Medicine, it's not just the metrics that are important. Metrics just only tells you that you could do the coursework, but it doesn't tell you if you can effectively work with individuals or be an excellent physician in the healthcare field. So at the root of things, I appreciate what Josh is saying. I appreciate Tamara here really reinforcing the values and the belief systems and the culture of medicine and healthcare. Tran, I appreciate you. If you have any other feedback or thoughts around this, we would love to hear from you as well. And if you also need further information, thank you again, Tamara, for the links that you've provided here. This is our contact information for our office as well. We are located in the Pennington Student Achievement Center, room 405. So we have just a couple more minutes. Tran, do you have any questions for us?
Well, first I wanted to say thank you for the presentation. I think, like you said, most of these things might seem intuitive at first, but I think sometimes you do need critical reflection and how you essentially emphasize, or I can't think of the English word, how you show that you do have these values, especially with cultural competence. I think that's one of the most important things that stood out to me, since I did grow up in the Philippines and I moved to the US when I was 14. So I did experience a lot of differences in cultural values. And I've also studied abroad in other countries. But I think one of the biggest thing to also think about is just you'll never really truly understand how a person from a different culture will react to things. But I think it is important to, like you said, empathize and have some basic respect between each other, because it's so I think there's always room to learn from other people, and I think you should take that perspective of you can always learn something new from other people from different cultures. So thank you for this presentation again.
Thank you, Trent. I really appreciated what you said. And I also think it even extends not just to individuals from other countries, but even within our own state. There's a tremendous difference between someone who was raised in Las Vegas or Reno and someone who comes from a rural community. Our medical students do rotations in our rural communities, and there's actually training that occurs to help them understand that there could be some fundamental differences in approach to health or in approach to social environments, simply based upon being raised in a small town versus a large city. And so being mindful of that, I really appreciate that you've developed that in yourself and are familiar with that. So thanks for adding that.
Thank you, Tamara. And again, I can't reiterate, a person with a 4.0, I know they've worked very hard to show that they are academically performing and doing really great work. But if there's also a way now for students to be mindful about a core competency rating scale, like where am I and how do I build on that to become this super 10 or person, I would really love students to also think about that in terms of their EAM preparation. So not just metrics, but being that really whole and well-rounded student in terms of that professionalism component. Again, thank you for joining us this afternoon. And I hope in the future we'll also be able to have more students to really be participating and perhaps even being able to talk about this in their own clubs and how to facilitate this in smaller groups.